Right behind me is downtown Las Vegas, and just a few steps away is where Las Vegas was founded in 1905. When it comes to Las Vegas nightlife, what comes to mind is showgirls Elvis and Frank Sinatra, not necessarily popular DJs like Paul Oakenfold, Cascade, or Calvin Harris. This documentary is about the evolution of nightlife, both in the mainstream and in the underground, and the spectacle of DJ talent in Vegas today. In the 1960s, young people listened to rock and roll and were performing dances like the twist and the Watusi. The 1970s was the time of the disco revolution, where DJs became the center of attention instead of the bands. A slew of nightclubs popped up, including Paul Anka's Jubilation. In the 1980s, the dance music expanded to include things like alternative music and hip-hop. Clubbers partied at establishments like Botany's and the legendary Shark Club. The next generation made the step into house and trance music at raves and nightclubs like the Grand Dame of Las Vegas clubs, Utopia. By the late 1990s, the strip hotels opened their doors to expensive clubs like Raw and Studio 54. Our journey through nightclub history ends with the multi-genre music of the 2000s. Along with the casino's opening multi-million-dollar nightclubs like C2K Rain and the Light Group's innovations with bottle service, making nightclubs extremely profitable. Nightlife reinvents itself through the years, but this being Vegas, many of the elements remain consistent, like dancing, celebrities, and of course, the party, which began with Vegas's birth. Beginning in 1905, when the city was founded, Las Vegas excelled in nightclubs. As a matter of fact, they even set aside a block known as the infamous Block 16. Block 16 was a place to gamble, have a drink, and offer legalized prostitution. Jazz innovator Jelly Roll Morton provided the entertainment, playing alongside his girlfriend Anita, who just happened to own the gem. In the 1930s, on Route 91, which is today known as the world-famous Las Vegas Strip, there were nightclubs like the Red Rooster and the Paradise, which featured jazz performers and big bands. In the 1940s, performers moved into larger lounges and clubs inside the hotels. The El Rancho was the first major hotel on the Strip, followed by the Last Frontier, where performers like comedians Jimmy Durante and Sophie Tucker performed. In 1944, Liberace was so popular that they quickly doubled his salary only after a week of performing on stage. In 1945, Billy Wilkerson, owner of famous nightclubs in Los Angeles, built the Flamingo Hotel with the help of underworld figures Meyer Lansky and Bugsy Siegel. At its opening, bandleader Javier Cugat was the entertainment director who added the talents of Jimmy Durante and, of course, the lovely Rose Marie. In 1952, the Sands opened with the famous Copa Room, featuring entertainers like Judy Garland, Lena Horne, Louis Armstrong, and of course the Rat Pack, being backed up by the famous Sands Copa Girls. In 1954, big band leader Louis Prima and his partner Keely Smith began performing at the Sahara late night. Prima changed the perceived idea of entertainment and converted it with a blend of musical excellence and magical energy not seen before on stage. He was so cool that Frank Sinatra would study Prima's formula and try to emulate it. The 1950s marked the next evolution in Las Vegas entertainment, with elaborate shows, which began with Las Vegas's first topless show, Minsky Goes to Paris at the Dunes, followed by the famous Lido de Paris at the Stardust. Showgirls rewrote the public image of Las Vegas as one of rhinestones, sequins, and over-the-top showmanship. 1964 was a pivotal year in Las Vegas nightclub history with the opening of the first discotheques in the city. The very first dance club in the city, run by Steve Miller and Keith Austin, was the first all-teenage nightclub in Las Vegas history.
Well, the Teen Beat Club was our concept of a brick-and-mortar nightclub built and designed directly to be a teenage venue. A non-alcohol, but an adult-looking building and interior. I mean, we had a lounge, we had a stage, we had a bar. It was a place that you wouldn't know was non-liquor, but it was, and it didn't need liquor to make money. The people paid an admission. Held 700 people on Paradise Road, and it opened on May the 1st, 1964, almost simultaneous with the Whiskey A Go-Go in LA and Gazzari's in LA and the Pussycat A Go-Go in Las Vegas and Whiskey A Go-Go here in Las Vegas. But all of a sudden, the town began, we built the city on rock and roll. It was the first time that was ever mentioned, because Las Vegas was always non-rock and roll. It didn't matter who you'd go to see in a hotel showroom. Rock and roll was not welcome. I mean, Bobby Darin maybe showed up, but you wouldn't necessarily hear rock and roll in a hotel here in Las Vegas until we proved that it was marketable with our TV show.
Jeff Kutash. I produce and direct theater in Las Vegas. When people were bored with partner dancing because the music changed, it was much more up-tempo and danceable, they started dancing by themselves. So here you would go to a club or a high school dance and people would not even be dancing with other people, which was brand new. But to dance solo, you had to make up the moves on your own. And that's what spawned street dancing. When the twist turned into about 25, 35 more dances, the penguin, the Bristol stomp, the slop, the bop, the hop, the jerk, the Watusi. But this new rock and roll groove and soul music and R&B prompted a different style of movement.
Right behind me is Circus Circus, which was built in 1968 and pretty much looks exactly the way it did back then. In the 1960s, Las Vegas was beginning to hit its stride as a popular tourist destination. Among obvious hotel amenities, we had attractions like discotheques like the Pussycat A Go-Go on the Strip and downtown's Whiskey A Go-Go. They provided bands playing danceable rock and roll and the groovy new thing, sexy go-go dancers. There were DJs who worked at the discotheques, but this time was a time when bands like the Checkmates were the main attraction, not the DJs.
Our show would go from 11 o'clock at night until daylight the next day. You know, we're taking a break sometime and we'd switch over with another band. Sly and the Family Stone, Adobe Gray, guys would come through town and they'd play at the Pussycat, you know, and we'd be there playing opposite them. And they would be on the stage above the bar, and the two go-go dancers dancing while they were performing. When the main shows would finish, they'd do a midnight show and they'd finish them by 2 o'clock. The Pussycat would be Sinatra, Tony Bennett, the showgirls from the showrooms, and you name it, people would be there. Sammy Davis. They'd all come in because that's where everybody came to hang out. And it was like that for about a year. It was a phenomenon in a way.
This was an era when the mob ran the town and their influence extended to the nightclubs.
I kind of liked it when the mob was running the place because everybody knew what was going on. Now, I didn't care much for the racial situation then, but as far as everybody was well managed here in town then.
The Civil Rights Act of 1964 didn't immediately change the face of Vegas from being the Mississippi of the West, but it was a beginning.
A formative time for us, because we were just guys that had been playing around dance clubs. So meeting Sammy Davis, Sammy took us under his wing and taught us the ropes as to how we're supposed to act and what was expected of us, and especially as to try to assimilate into the white Las Vegas, so I can walk around in the casinos and be as comfortable as anybody else. And that only happened, say, around mid-1960s. I remember when Sammy would come to town, he would have to stay on the west side and in somebody's house. And then when he joined the Rat Pack and Nips hooked up with Sinatra, Sinatra goes, no, he stays right here at the Sands with the rest of us. Now that was who Sinatra was in my book. He was that guy.
At the hotels, Vegas translated the dance craze of the Watusi into topless go-go girl productions, and through time they did the same with the disco craze and again with breakdancing. Bobby McGee's opened both as a restaurant and as a discotheque, becoming legendary. Their DJ was the focus of entertainment instead of the bands, and this was what changed everything.
Probably the model for these places back then, it was in Phoenix. I was there. I went to Bobby McGee's. And yeah, that was the one to model it after.
In Las Vegas, Rainier Gund and Rudy Schneider copied the formula of Bobby McGee's and opened Billy Jack's on the Strip across the street from the Hacienda Hotel, hiring Larry Taylor, who had no DJ training but easily understood what was required. He was a natural performer and a renowned MC.
Billy Jack's was really, really packed because, for one, there was no other discotheque in town. Not anything that was really a discotheque. We opened up, and in the very first year, it was like New Year's Eve every single night.
Met Larry Taylor. Him and I, we become a very good friend. And he impressed me when he started dancing when I was a bar boy. I looked at it and said, what's this guy's doing? It's so crazy, dancing in the floor with the tambourines and this and that. He had those platform shoes, those big platform shoes. I remember they were white.
And it was a place to be seen. And literally the dance floor was packed, and some of them had no qualms about getting on the dance floor. But I loved it when they came in. Diana Ross came in, and Billy Preston came in one time. And David Brenner, the comedian. Well, we really had that happening.
I was in charge of the whole room, and I get to meet a lot of people there. All these Italians and Puerto Ricans and Cubans and all these hookers and all that, and pimps, you name it. So I had a lot of fun there.
The disco era was wild, a lot of different clothing, a lot of different personalities and people. The music was, to me, it always will be still the best. A lot of drugs, a lot of partying, but fun, always fun.
60s was discotheque, 70s was disco. And that happened through an exaggeration of orchestrations, where they took simple dance music, 120 beats per minute, and they surrounded it with violins and horn sections and massive production, so that a simple song, which was a dance song, would become an epic, a Donna Summer classic.
Dirty Sally's, again operated by Rainier and Rudy, was the next important club to open.
It's the same building that the Pussycat A Go-Go was in became Dirty Sally's, which then began to beat all the other places at the time. And it was the place.
It was a bigger club, bigger place.
The bartenders were going home with no less than $100 to $300 a night.
There were a lot of different celebrities that came there. Wayne Newton used to come. Sergio Franke used to come.
Siegfried and Roy came in there. Sammy Davis Jr. would come in there. Rudy started a thing that once a month we'd have the cement ready and a star ready to come up. Liberace pull up in a limousine, get out in all his flamboyancy, and he drew the candelabra that he kept on his piano. He drew a picture of it and the grand piano.
We had many, many, many working girls that used to come into Dirty Sally's. A lot came in after work. A lot came in during to try and pick up on tourists. We would have a dance contest. First place would get $100. Second place would get $50. Third place would get 2 drinks. And people would come out of the woodwork for these dance contests.
The 1970s were the height of the backgammon era, and clubs such as Billy Jack's and Dirty Sally's offered a backgammon room for its customers.
They didn't make any money off the backgammon. They made money by having more people come in, because that room was off to the side, probably about as big as the space that we're in right now. And those people would sit in there and they would play till the sun came up. They'd play all night long. And they weren't even interested in the dance floor. There were people that did both, dance and played backgammon. But there were some pretty high rollers in there. And the club couldn't take a cut or charge them to play or anything. No, it was just to get more people. They were drinking and doing whatever recreational drugs that they thought they could get away with. I think we had a large mixture of people there, especially the Latin people. We had a lot of Cubans that came in, and they all kind of hung together as a clique, and they were great dancers too. We had the break dancers that came in were Latin for the most part. Jeff Kutash, his dancers used to come in, but we had a great mixture of people.
Drugs at Dirty Sally's was very prevalent. I mean, it was kept secret. You had to know who to walk up to, who to get what you wanted from, but you could basically get anything you wanted. From Quaaludes to cocaine to speed to marijuana. There was never a shortage.
Nothing was hidden. It was on the tables. If you knew the maitre d', you were able to score on the way in whatever you wanted. Or if he wasn't then, get a seat, and a few minutes later, the maitre d', and they were all named Ignacio for some reason. They would come to your table and give you an envelope and thank you very much.
Back then, it was crazy. People were hooking up easier. Everybody was doing cocaine. And lewds, 90% of the people out were doing these two drugs. And it was like just smoking a cigarette. They were blatant with it.
I was ticked off. I was pissed off that there was some people from Gladys Knight's show, the Pips, that wanted to come in, and Rainier told them to tell the black guys they can't come in. They're all dressed and they look like Pips. And so he goes, these aren't Pips, they're the Pips. It's not Gladys Knight and the Pimps, the Pips. And I don't care who they are, I don't want them in the club. So he wouldn't let them in. And definitely, I guess they told Gladys, and she just said, we're going to get us an attorney. That's not going to happen.
Rainier Gunn, of what I know of the man, he was a very, he was a Nazi. I mean, he was best friends with the guy who owned the Imperial Palace. And Rainier had Nazi signs or whatever it is in his office, you know, and he was a hardcore German.
Racial discrimination was still alive, with African Americans not allowed in clubs like Dirty Sally's. But there were other options on the west side, with small clubs and DC Ryder and Hurt 'em Bad's mobile discos, and park parties and roller disco at the Playland skating rink as well.
I'm Samuel Wesley, known as the Gigolo of Disco. I started out at the AD Guy Center and going up there every Friday and Saturday night, which is located on the west side. And from there went into things like being a member of Hurt 'em Bad to I started my own DJ mobile disco business called the Gigolo of Discos, which was me and my brother, Wally B. You were not going to get an offer to be a DJ in any type of club establishment that was somewhere located on the predominantly white side of town, or anything that would draw in white kids. We were young at that time, so we were only catering to people our age. And it led us to have to make things happen on our own side of town, and that's the west side. And we didn't have a choice. We know racism exists today, so you can imagine what it was back in the day. And they would give you every excuse in the world why they wouldn't let you be a DJ in a disco back in the 70s. So we would have to rent hotel rooms and things of that nature and come up with some gimmick to justify us wanting to have the party, but you can bet after the party was over, we wouldn't be going back to that club or hotel room.
Being a DJ back in the 70s, you know what I mean? You just controlled, you were the conductor. You just controlled that whole crowd. It was the music that you played that got them on the dance floor. It's the things that you said that brought them back to the clubs. It was the atmosphere that you made throughout the night that just kept people coming every night.
Saturday Night Fever was released in 1977, and the nightclub industry exploded. The two most important clubs of the disco era were the Brewery and Jubilation. The Brewery was more of a dressed-down local establishment, and Paul Anka's Jubilation was an upscale, tourist-driven club. And both functioned as popular restaurants until the music started later at night. The other late 1970s discos included Gibby's, Oz, and the cocaine-fueled after-hours club of John John's.
It was a beautiful nightclub, and of course it was a restaurant too. It was a high-end restaurant, a nice gourmet room. So people would go there and eat, have a real nice dinner, and then they would wander into the disco, into the nightclub, and have cocktails and hang out and drink. The people who came to the clubs were dressed nicely, beautiful dresses, men wore suits and things. It was kind of like Saturday Night Fever. Conventional park hand lighting on each side of the dance floor up high, and then there was a big mirror ball on top of the stage. And basically the dance floor was like a little stage, so when you went up to dance, it was like you were going up on this little stage, and that's where you danced, and people sat back around the club and they watched you dance. You know, it was nice.
It was an amazing club. Everybody that was appearing in town would come there. Cher, you'd see Tony Curtis, Sammy Davis Jr., you know, the UNLV basketball team. All the celebrities would go there. And I remember my first night, fully working, and I looked down at the dance floor, and I just saw like 20 or 30 major celebrities.
The first gig I had here after Dick Clark was with a fellow named Steve Wynn, who became Mr. Vegas. And I said, I should be working at your hotel, the Golden Nugget. And I projected my dancers, my routines on the wall of his office, and he loved it. And he said, I'll buy it. What do you need? And we worked out a deal, and now we are formally in our own show called The Dancing Machine in Las Vegas at the Golden Nugget. It was a big hit, show of the year, lounge act of the year. Then I get a phone call one day from a representative of a man named Lefty Rosenthal. And Lefty, if you remember the movie Casino, was played by Robert De Niro, and his partner was played by Joe Pesci. And these are real guys, and it was a real mob. And I get a phone call to request bringing my show from downtown to the Stardust uptown on the Strip, which is a big jump and a major move professionally. It also was a hotel that was run by the mob. So you're always walking on eggshells, but this was now the big time. And sure enough, Steve gives me his blessing. And the next thing you know, I'm performing with my dance machine at the Stardust hotels. So he had to keep his posture up by creating some sort of an image of him outside the hotel. So he does a TV show. Part of this TV show is he has a relationship with Jubilation, which is the club in Vegas, Paul Anka's club, big club. So Frank would hold his TV show out of Jubilation. So I find myself being a co-host of a TV show called I think it was called the Frank Rosenthal Show. And this is what gave him his presence without doing anything illegal. But I had to support his passion, and I had to do dance numbers every week. Never paid me. He said, you're working at the hotel, you don't need to get paid to do the TV show. Okay, Frank.
Jeff, disco dancing has really taken over. And you're known to be a dancer.
I'm known to be a few things, but yes, but a dancer. Disco has taken over, Frank. In fact, Las Vegas is one of the disco capitals of America. It really is. You wouldn't think so because the population here compared to New York or Chicago or Los Angeles is not even close, but there are a lot of discophiles who support the music of the dance, and of course Jubilation here is one of the most popular clubs in the country, and it's hot.
If you watch the movie Casino, you see they shot it someplace else, but it's supposed to emulate Jubilation. In the movie, it's got like zebra seats, but the Robert De Niro character is the guy that had the talk show, and the Spilaccios, you know, they were in the club all the time. Now, at the time, I didn't know who was who, but I knew there were mobsters in the club. You know, there was no doubt about it.
George Luster was a very sharp businessman. He recruited me from the 80 Guy Center. He came up and said he'd like to start a crew, and he'd like me to be his head DJ. And he was, you know, maybe a decade older than me at the time, so he could only show me things about the DJ business that I didn't know at the time. But he taught me business, he taught me quality equipment, and he just taught us how to deal with the people.
Yeah, luckily I came from a small town, Victorville, California, and my pops got stationed to Nellis Air Force Base. Moved out here in 1976 was a great thing because that small town syndrome, and I was already into music, so this is the perfect city for me. So yeah, being on the base, we had pool parties at the base pool, and was probably one of my first introductions to one of the legendary DJs, which was Hurt 'Em Bad. Around 15, 16 years old, he was throwing these pool parties on the base pool with his DJ setup, and he was doing R&B and funk. There was no hip hop, at least not on vinyl, so you weren't listening to hip hop. But those dances people were doing the latest dances to the latest music.
Playland, it was a skating ring, of course. It used to be an ice palace. And in about 1980, it was starting its heyday there. We would have two skates. We would have a skate for, say, teenagers, say kids 8 to 15 or 17. and that would end at about 7 p.m., starting at about 3, and then he would have a late skate from midnight to 3 in the morning. And then after that ended, we would go upstairs to where they had a club called The Top. Sometimes it would be live music, sometimes we would DJ up at that place. And it would pack in maybe 600 kids in the first skate and maybe 500 adults in the second skate. That Playland, that's a place where interracial couples could come and enjoy, you know, entertainment. Enjoy dancing, enjoy skating, or whatever type of things we were doing there, because we didn't turn a blind eye to it or you know, cause harassment to who they chose to like.
City Nightclub, it was a place where DJ Frankie was from New York. He brought that New York vibe and the hip hop scene from the New York era to Las Vegas. So our DJing there was an urban market, so it was a place that the urban crowd can get to, not on the west side of Las Vegas. So it was somewhere like nice to go back in that time.
Hi, I'm Frank Annabelle, also known as DJ Frankie here in Las Vegas. I've been a DJ and nightlife operator for decades. My most notable residencies, I would say, was the Brewery nightclub. After the Brewery, my own nightclub at a young age, I owned and ran with 2 partners, the City Nightclub and Commercial Center. After that was That's Entertainment, the Teen Club, where I started working with my long-term 27-year partner, DJ Rob. After the City, I think it was the Tramps. After Tramps, it was Shark Club. And after Shark Club led me to the greatness of Studio 54 at the MGM Grand. I was lucky enough to get the key to the city for all these accomplishments that if I mentioned now, this would be a 3-hour ordeal, but I had a ball doing it.
So when I had my own nightclub back in 1982, the City Nightclub and Commercial Center, I wasn't even old enough to be in it. I did Wednesdays and Saturday, open format, mostly urban, and Ken Jordan. He did Friday night, KUNV Rock Avenue night. And he'd DJ in the front, and in the back we'd have bands like Smart Bomb and Agent Orange. But those were the bands that played in the back, from punk rock to new wave, anything alternative. And in the front was Ken Jordan DJ.
University radio station KUNV and the urban station KCEP were the alternative for anything that wasn't being played on commercial stations like indie rock, pop, jazz, dance music, and hip hop.
When I started at KUNV and when I was first music director, Las Vegas was a desert for music, for live music, for nightclubs. There was nothing.
Some of the most original park parties happened during that early 80s with Hurt 'em Bad. He would go to these parks, he'd get permits to set up a sound, and he'd announce it on the radio. He had that iconic jingle that said, "It's Hurt 'em Bad at City View this Friday night," and everybody would come out. He'd have the sound system. He'd DJ most of the time. The twins were there DJing. I went and watched, and so yeah, he was one of those first guys to throw those park parties. Maybe that's where we got the idea, let's throw our park parties. But his was more adult, even though there was no front door and you needed an ID to get in. It seemed more urban and more adult themed because he was playing a lot of R&B. We were playing all the breakdance, hip hop, and dance music and catered to that younger crowd. So there was very young kids coming to the park, and so our vibe was a little different.
That's Entertainment, which was an all-ages club, which means it's a kids club, a teenage club. DJ Frankie had been doing at least one night a week there. And that was more of a hip-hop crowd. And at the time, I think I was the new music director for the Rock Avenue on KUNV. And so he had asked me about doing a new music night there. I said, sure, I'll give it a try. And we started doing it, and it was, super successful and a lot of fun. That went for a few years. We ended up moving the night to different places, but That's Entertainment was really where I think I got started with, club DJing.
So when I went to That's Entertainment, they said, can you do 2 nights, Friday and Saturday? I said I could, but it'll do 2 weeknights instead of 1 strong night. So just give me Saturday, and I'll do the hip hop thing on Saturday, not just rap, actual hip hop, the whole culture encompassed under one roof, from breaking, popping, graffiti, scratch mixing, rapping, fat shoelaces on your Pumas or Converse, Adidas, your Kango hats, the whole thing. And I said, that's the scene that I bring in here, but I'd rather do just Saturday night packed like that. And I have an idea for you for Friday, and I brought in Ken Jordan.
Every Friday and Saturday from now on, for all you hip-hoppers out there, we'll be rocking the place. And the place is That's Entertainment. That's going to be happening every Friday and Saturday at That's Entertainment. Right now, the Magic Mix featuring the Street Beat crew, first half live at That's Entertainment. Check it out.
That's Entertainment was in an industrial park, in the back of an industrial park. So it was a great location because you wouldn't be bothered with anything. You know, all the underage kids were listening to Depeche Mode, and they were really driving the alternative music scene. So, and they had no place to go. There was no place for those kids to dance anywhere. So That's Entertainment came along, and it was a huge deal.
That's Entertainment was just a teen club. There was nothing else to do for under 21, period, anywhere. At the same point in time that That's Entertainment was open and I was a teenager, the only other options would have been the brewery or Paul Anka's Jubilation. It was the tail end of the disco era. There were DJs that was catered just to tourists, just to grown-ups.
Frankie and Rob were the DJs over at That's Entertainment, and my DJ Mike, was an FBI crew. He was also on the Bomb Squad with Frankie and Rob and Mikey Mix and the rest of the cats. And we started going there every Saturday. Frankie let Mike open up on the tables. Rob normally closed. Rob's super dope. And, you know, it was That's Entertainment was the social club for teenagers, man. I mean, that was like the spot to be at. Be there at 7 o'clock, and by 11:30 they were letting you out because 12 o'clock midnight for underage people, they had to go home.
It's called breaking, and as Dana Gentry reports tonight, this New York ghetto pastime is doing wonders for some local youths.
Dancing's out of the discos and back on the streets. It's called breaking, and it's shaking the nation. It doesn't take much, just some music, a piece of cardboard, and a lot of skill. Breakers say they spend hours perfecting their moves on their own time and at school.
We had this thing called the hip-hop culture, and it included breakdancing and graffiti and MC rapping and, of course, DJing. And I wanted to do it all. I was doing it all. I was already a dancer. The thing I lacked a little bit of skills on was graffiti, but Frankie came from a graffiti background, and he showed me a lot of stuff. And we would end up graffitiing and doing walls and neighborhoods and stuff. And we ended up joining cliques for two reasons, because that was the thing to do. And also we could promote those cliques by having an opposing clique, us being the City Break Force or the Bomb Squad, and another crew being Rock Skittle. We would have these cliques, and we'd have DJs, graffiti artists, breakdancers, and DJs. But then we could say, hey, at the Dunes, we're going to have the Smurfs battling the Boppers, or City Break Force battling Rock Skill, or whatever we could do, because that was the thing to do. We got that from New York. When the Dynamic Breakers would battle the New York City Breakers, or the Rock Steady crew would, so that was the hip hop thing. That was the hip hop thing to do, is start these cliques, these groups that included breakdancers, rappers, DJs, graffiti artists. And I mean, we tore the town up in 84, 85. We were in all the newspapers with, walls of graffiti, and we used those backdrops at our DJ functions that we painted the night before, and then we're DJing in front of it. So totally legit looking hip hop culture scene was happening.
Hi, my name is Katie Matheson. I'm an artist, painter, sculptor, living here in Las Vegas, Nevada. Gay nightclubs in the early 80s. For me, when I started going out to the clubs, the gay clubs like the Gypsy, the Garage, they were, to me, the equivalent of like an alternative underground scene. They were the only clubs and bars you could go to that had alternative music that you weren't hearing on the radio, music that you would probably only hear in other cities like LA or New York City. And the other clubs around town didn't have this type of entertainment. It didn't have this type of music. So it was great, because you not only were experiencing the gay scene, you were also getting to see another aspect of the underground scene in Las Vegas.
First club I DJ'd at after coming back from failing in college was a place called P.T. Boakley's. It was across the street from UNLV. And I would say that it was the first great college bar for UNLV. And the Boakley brothers were great to work for. And of course, I played all the good KUNV Rock Avenue music. And everybody loved it because it was the only place you could hear it at was KUNV's Rock Avenue and a college bar like P.T. Boakley's. That changed everything for Maryland Parkway, and it changed everything for UNLV. And the whole industry of the nightclub business started on Maryland Parkway. P.T. Boakley's led to the sports pub, which led to Cat, which led to Moose McGillicuddy's, which led to a whole slew of great college bars in the 80s.
1984, June 1984, Frankie opened up Club Uptown with the owner and the manager over there. His name was Neil, and brought me in as one of the premier resident DJs of Club Uptown. So we were toggling between Uptown, which was across the street from Circus on the Strip, and that was more of an adult contemporary type of vibe, you know, where we were catering more to the adults and things. And then we had the teen thing with Das Entertainment. So I like both of them because, of course, that whole teen scene was just really cool because, you know, it was uninhibited. And, you know, a lot of the kids, all they did, they just wanted to come there and party and have a good time. Whereas you would go to a lot of the, you know, the main nightclub type of things, you know, people were kind of tight and stuck up and things like that.
So Frankie goes over to Uptown back like in the early 1980s. And him and Rob were basically the DJs there. So something happened with Neil, the owner, and Frankie and Rob. So basically they were kind of out of there. So I didn't really want to take the job being loyal to those guys. But he said, you know what, you should go ahead and take it because if you don't do it, somebody else is going to do it. So that's when I went into Uptown. Mike Tyson, he had a fight, the fight that he lost with Buster Douglas. I don't think he ever trained for that fight because he was in Uptown every single night leading up to that fight that we were open. I said, man, I don't know, Mike's not training for this fight. Sure enough, he got beat by Buster Douglas. Can't believe that. I know why, but he's over there with us.
Tramps was the very first nightclub. What was the first club in years that was being built from the ground up? But it was built by the Station Casinos people. Frank Fertitta Jr. was in partnership with Ben Santoli, who was a real estate developer, and they developed and they built Tramps. When Tramps first opened, it was such a big deal. Nothing new had been built during all of the 80s, and this was probably 1986. When Tramps opened, the line was around the building, and it was around the building for a long time. That place did so much business. I would venture that Tramps did more business than maybe everybody else combined. Tramps had food, Tramps had a dance floor, and there wasn't really anything special because there wasn't any great lighting at the time. It was just all can lights, par lights, you know, just basic lighting. But it was a very nice club, and it was new, and it was the first new place that had been around for a long time. And then that led to Botany's. Botany's was the opposite of Tramps. Tramps was a very casual place, and Botany's was on the other end of Flamingo Road, and it was more upscale. So you had a great play between two clubs in the late 80s, between Tramps on West Flamingo and Botany's on East Flamingo.
I started working at Mr. G's, another urban club, and it didn't open that way like some of the other clubs. It was like a two-room venue that had 50s and bebop on one side and more top 40 disco with a dance floor that looked just like the Saturday Night Fever dance floor. It was lit and blinked all different colors, looked just like the Saturday Night Fever movie dance floor on that set. And but it ended up kind of going downhill, and sometimes when clubs go downhill, they'll bring in an urban promoter or a radio station or urban DJ and give it new life. And that had a good run in all of 87 and some of 88. I was DJing there at Mr. G's.
DJ Bob was DJing over there at Mr. G's. And I never really DJ'd at Mr. G's. I used to go over there and hang out with Rob. And there's some famous people that work there as well. Suge Knight was actually a security guard at Mr. G's.
Mr. G's, I don't remember that much about Mr. G's because it was so far away. It was a different area of town. It was more the East Las Vegas area of town that it appealed to, but it was a really neat club. One half of the club was all these booths of old cars, and it was set up to be a 50s club. And then the other half of the club was the disco side that had a dance floor like Saturday Night Fever with the lights blinking underneath. And DJ Frankie had that club for a long time.
Bogey's was a male strip review nightclub. So, just imagine, in the early portion of the night, you got a whole lot of hot, sweaty ladies and these guys, doing what they do to the strip in front of the girls, and they throwing panties and hotel keys and all this other stuff. And I was actually doing the sound because usually after they came off, then I would segue into the whole nightclub thing after they did the strip club thing. So a lot of times I got some of the fringe benefits of, the girls, basically catering to, a lot of the male strippers and just being hot and bothered with those guys, which was great.
The Shark Club was the very first big world-class nightclub in Las Vegas. The size of the club, the lighting was absolute state-of-the-art. Lowell Fowler owned a lighting company called High End Systems, and he did clubs all over the world. And he had done this club in Austin Nights, which was the basis for the Shark Club when Charlie Snow and Chuck came from Texas.
I worked there probably close to 10 years, and it was packed every single night forever, even with the competition.
We had a waiting line of about an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours. And then the VIP side, where we would roll in everybody from Bill Gates to Shaq, Mike Tyson, Magic Johnson, Clint Eastwood, Robert Downey Jr., Lars of Metallica. I carded Gene Simmons because I had never seen him without makeup. Said, "I'm Gene." I said, "Yeah, right." I looked at it. I'll be damn, Hollywood Kelly, it's Gene Simmons, come on in. It was amazing times.
I think the Shark Club was the first one to break through the barrier as a tourist attraction. And because they were playing so much new wave and they did videos from like Animal House, and it was very preppy, very scholastic.
One of the attractions about the Shark Club was the light show. 2 times a night at 11 o'clock and usually around 1:30, we would stop all the music and we would bring down our video screens and we would start with a video scene. And it might be a video scene from Jaws where the guy gets eaten by a shark. It might be the video scene from the Batman movie where Batman has a shark hanging on his leg and he's getting pulled up by a helicopter. And then the screens would come up and then the trusses would come down and we would start a choreographed light show. And it would last about a minute and a half and boom, would end like that. We'd drop all the trusses down, then we had a countdown. We had the NASA countdown. Bang, we'd hit with something real hard. Either the Push It, whatever the latest club hit was, or something rocking like You Shook Me All Night Long, and the club would just explode.
Drugs were prevalent everywhere in the Vegas nightlife in the 80s, period. It wasn't just the Shark Club. It was everywhere. I mean, the Shark Club, I'm not saying by design, but every stall in the men's bathroom at the Shark Club had a full door that shut all the way, and every countertop was a tile, smooth. I'm not saying it was for a certain thing, but it seemed like it might have been. I don't know.
The underground raves began around 1989 with events like Ride and White Chocolate, not focusing just on electronic music, but a mix that included other genres, depending upon the DJ. Some of the important DJs of the time were Dave Fogg or Lord Create, and of course War and Peace, who went on to be one of the most famous hip-hop DJs in club history.
Well, the underground raves were basically music that you wouldn't necessarily hear in the outlets back then. Radio, obviously there was no streaming back then. Everything was coming out of a specific DJ culture and a very specific movement coming out of those underground parties. Artists putting out records. A lot of it was based in the UK. There were some American artists that started making music like that, but that was really part of why they were undergrounds, is because you would go to these events and hear basically just really the beginnings of electronic music or electronic dance music.
The way it started with me is I was living in LA actually, and I went to this club called Water the Bush. And I said, you know, I can go back home and do this, back to Vegas. I came back and I met this guy from England, JB, and we did our first event at the Jockey Club.
Dave came to me about, 2 weeks or whatever, say, hey, we're gonna do this underground thing called White Chocolate. It's gonna be at this location, yada, yada. And I was like, okay, cool. And he knew that we both had the same kind of music taste. We both like underground house and hip hop. And for whatever reason, I was doing a UNLV party or a radio, I can't remember. But the first one I said I couldn't do. And I was mildly like, whatever, Dave's doing a little crazy thing, I'll get on it later or he'll tell me about it, whatever. I was doing my thing, And I remember that night, he called me. It was like 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. or something like that. That night called, and he was just like, yo, you have to come to the next one. It was like, we played house, we played a little bit of hip hop. The crowd was packed. Like, it was a really good event. You have to be at the next one. And from that point on, I remember when I showed up with the records I had just bought from LA record stores and, a little group of hip hop that I put together because he said we play hip hop. And he's banging out house and I'm like, wow, this is awesome. People are, everyone's dancing, everyone's having a good time. And then I got on, played house and everyone's dancing, everyone's having a good time. It's really energetic, it feels great. So I was like, this is awesome, this feels really good. And I think the way we formatted it back then was we just played house, and maybe the last 30 minutes was like hip hop, and we just played underground hip hop. So it was both underground stuff that you really wouldn't hear on mainstream radio.
It's 11:21. Do you know where your teenager is? He or she could be checking out a rave, a new fad among the suburban set where kids come to the inner city and party all night long in an abandoned warehouse. Tonight, Channel 10's Luann Kahn goes undercover and find out that this new thing that's happening could be dangerous to your child.
Yeah, so I remember just me and my friends, we were just going to a bunch of college parties, like a lot of college, bars and clubs off of Maryland Parkway. And then we got invited to come to, I believe it was White Chocolate was the first underground that I went to. I had no idea what it was. But I went there with my friends and we just fell in love with the scene. Never heard EDM music, never heard of house, never heard of techno, any of that stuff. But everybody was there. They were dancing till the wee hours, and we're like, "Oh, I love this! We had so much fun," and we looked forward to another one. We kept on going to them, kept on going to them. We kept on going to the ride, going back and forth from the ride to White Chocolate, because those are only two that I could recall that were the main ones that we were going to. And yeah, it was just so much fun.
In terms of what kept us motivated to keep going and keep doing these events, obviously there was, from a promoter's end, even from a DJ's end, it was more about the money. Remember, there was no ticketing outlets that we were using. If we got 300 people in the door and the cops came and shut it down, we weren't refunding that money to people. That money went directly in our pocket. So it was worth the risk. And even though the police came and shut a lot of these types of events down, there wasn't really any consequences from it.
Yeah, so my first rave was in Pomona, downtown Pomona. I was in college freshman year. Young lady asked me if I wanted to go see Doc Martin. I only knew my Doc Martin boots. The next night, I think we drove, we were in Laguna, so we were in Orange County, so we drove 45 minutes up to Pomona. We had a park. It was strange, because we had a park far away from the warehouse. And I remember as we walked and got closer, and we were in an industrial part of Pomona, we crossed a railroad track. You started to hear a little bit of thump, We knocked on a door, and the big steel door opened, and I stepped in, and changed my life from that moment on. It was a dark, dingy warehouse with film loops going, and you know, the rave music was a little different back then. It was a lot carnival-y kind of, you know, and people in different corners and holding hands and dancing. And next day or Monday went back to school and thought, I want more.
I was a resident at a party called Flammable Liquid in Los Angeles. We started out with like 1 speaker, no monitors, and 10 people. But the magic of this party was it would start at 3 a.m. So everyone from all the other parties would come together, and this would be the meeting place for DJs and club goers and people that might have done other things during the course of a night. And it quickly grew, and the magic thing about Flammable Liquid was it would be in a different location every week, and you wouldn't find out till like 1:30 in the morning or 2 in the morning where you were going. So sometimes it'd be in churches, restaurants, warehouses, be in a very many different types of places. You wouldn't know what you were getting yourself into for the night. So that adventure was great. No social media. So if you didn't have the phone number, you really couldn't find out where you were going.
I'm 19 years old, and I go in contract to do a party, a rave, inside of a casino, which never happened before. And with liquor, event occurs, and it breaks 1,000 people. And I make about $35,000, $45,000. I can't remember the number. And then I do the math the next day, and I actually lost money. But it looked glorious.
I remember in the Aladdin's hotel, it was in a conference room, and just the sheer size of the location, I was kind of pretty blown away that there was a scene outside of Los Angeles.
So some of the events that stand out as being some of the original rave events in Las Vegas was Lemonade, which is another one that John Tobin did, Planet X. Exxon, which was a suburban lounge east. I was with Jose and Shu and myself. So a lot of those events were basically beginnings of it all, like just seeing like so many people who were sharing our tapes. That's what it was. I used to hear my tape being played in a parking lot before I would walk into the party. Like our tapes were flooding the local scene.
The people that would go, it was all colors, and I would say the ages between 17 all the way up to like 30-year-olds, mostly young kids. And I had never experienced that before. I was like, man, this is like a love gathering or something. One rave that actually stands out is one of Noel's events at Fuddy Duddy's, and it was called Mind Warp. We had DJ Dan, DJ Speedy, I was DJing. I can't remember any of the other DJs, but that place was just going off. It was just, to me, that was like the peak of the rave scene.
My name is Chris Lewis, and I was a part of a group of club promoters called Recycled Souls. We did hip-hop events. We tried to take a different angle. And so what we did was we approached local rap groups, and we wanted to basically do a showcase of local rap groups. So we would pick 4 or 5 artists, mostly rappers, occasionally R&B singers as well. And so we did this thing called Cool Flow, and we did a series of events at the Knights of Columbus. I think we did 4, and they were once a month, And I remember our big marketing ploy was guys were $10 and girls were $1. We became like the hub, which was funny because like you always viewed it as entertainment and the Troubadour was the hub, you know, for hip hop. And now all of a sudden, like it was almost like we took it over without even being conscious of that fact, because you wanted to hear a place you could hear this music, and you know, it wasn't easily played anywhere. So it was challenging, man, but it was fun. It was great. It was like really great memories.
Club Rio, The Drink, and The Beach opened in the mid-1990s to much success. The city was yearning for something new, and these clubs entered the market with diversity and acclaim.
So Club Rio, in the beginning, was just a buffet. It was a beautiful place to go have a Sunday brunch. Somehow I went to the Rio and I looked at that room and I saw things in there and I was like, wow, this would be an amazing place to have a club in, you know? Finally, almost 2 years later, Club Rio was born, and it was amazing. It was like unlike anything that happened in Vegas. I mean, it was a huge nightclub, and the concern was, we'll never fill this place with people to come in and dance and party. But man, we opened up, and we had Jody Watley, who was the headliner that we had hired to perform that night. And I remember going in a couple of hours before the club was to start, you know, to make sure everything was set up, and there was already a line out there.
Club Rio was great, and it was absolutely killing it. But to me, it was still a showroom, which it was. The restrooms were outside. There was nothing really intimate about it. You know, it had the marketing machine of a casino. It put bodies through there. I never really liked the club. Did I go? Yeah, there was a lot of people there. So I would go, I would network. I never fully understood it other than it was in a casino and had the traffic.
My DJ name is Pete Funk. I started spinning on Chicago's South Side in 1984. When I was in college in the 90s, I started spinning at some clubs like Shelter, Crowbar, Red Dog, and there was a place called Drink and E2, owned by Michael Morton and Scott DeGraff. And I had a residency there for a while. And they talked about opening up a brand new Vegas location. So I took them up on it, went out, relocated to Las Vegas, and they had this beautiful brand new mega club that they built. It was in a huge horseshoe shape, and there was multiple rooms, and they had painted psychedelic, colorful flowers all over, and there was just tons of woodwork and brass and stone countertops, and they really sank a lot of money into this place. And in the center of the horseshoe, they had this huge stage for bands, and they had a big dance floor, and they had a retractable roof that they would open up. Our opening night, we had George Clinton and the P-Funk All-Stars. Eventually, we started having some local cover bands, like the 80s cover band Love Shack. And then eventually we had the 70s cover band Boogie Nights that was playing over at the Sharks Club.
The first true nightclub I went to was the Beach nightclub. The Beach was, it was the craziest party I'd ever gone to. I mean, I remember these toilet roll things that they would do. They would throw all these toilet roll paper out into the audience, and it was always with the song "Come On Eileen," you know.
Working at places like on the west side, like Moulin Rouge, 30-something, you know, you got a different kind of crowd, you know. You got more crowd from the neighborhood there. You got some people that came from the other parts of town to go to those places, but it was mostly neighborhood crowd from, you know, 30-something, West Side Story, Moulin Rouge. There was all neighborhood, and you had some people that came from across town to go, but not too many that I remember. But working at the other clubs, you know, was kind of prestigious, you know, getting off the West Side, going to different places.
Death Row Records owner Suge Knight opened his Club 662 in the same location as Botany's, where he frequented in the 1980s. Even though 662 is probably Las Vegas's most famous hip-hop club, because of the shooting of Tupac Shakur, it didn't actually officially open and was used as a venue for after-fight parties. DJ Warren Peace and his hype man, Mr. Bob, worked there.
662 was only open during fight parties. That was the only time it was open. If it was open other times, I wasn't DJing, so I only did the fight party. So I'm bringing it back. I think I brought it back twice. And all of a sudden, this little dude, white t-shirt, vest, comes walking around the corner, bald head, and comes over and he moves Bob. Bob's to my right. He moves Bob, and I'm just like, who the fuck is this? And I've never met this guy. He was like, my party's going. I don't know who this fuck this guy is. And I look over, I was like, oh shit, that's Tupac. Tupac says, hey, excuse me, just, move over for a sec. I'm like, guess he's gonna DJ. So he goes over and he pulls the needle off the record. Well, I have 2 records going. He pulls it off the wrong record. So I said, no, it's that one. So at this point, I'm like, it's Tupac. Like, whatever he's gonna do, it's fucking Tupac. Like, okay, So he pulls off the second one. Sure enough, the music boomed up. What the fuck, nigga, you suck. Get your fucking ass off the record if you suck. Nigga, go home. I get cussed out. What the fuck? Because it's the record. It's the fucking record. Tupac grabs the mic from Bob and says, fuck this, y'all. This is a West Coast party. Fuck this, is fucking West Coast. I'll never, ever, ever forget. The place all look at Tupac and it's like dead silent. And I'm like, yeah, nigga, this West Coast. Fuck that, nigga. Yeah, we playing West Coast. Oh, you're playing West Coast. No, fuck that. We playing West Coast. Yeah, Tupac, tell me. And I remember thinking, you asshole, you fucked up my whole shit. Like, I had everything ready for this.
The Las Vegas underground Latinx party scene started off very modest at first. Started in 1993, but by mid-1995, it had morphed into one of the most predominant underground scenes of the time period, with many of the events drawing well over 1,000 partygoers of all ages. Local DJs such as Jose Tuhype, Carlos Celeste, Panic, and the late DJ Poppy spun the best in Latin house, old school funk, and K-rock new wave flashbacks. By 1996, these events became synonymous with Chicago's bass-thumping hard house sound. The scene became defined by the rebel style that originated in Southern California's Inland Empire. It was a genre influenced by legendary icons of the 1950s, such as James Dean and Marlon Brando, with oversized Levi's 501 jeans and Harley-Davidson boots. And the girls were called divas. They would wear platform stilettos, go-go boots, and booty shorts.
So I get a call from this promoter and he wants me to work an event, and he said it was going to be in front of, on the strip, at a strip mall. So I went ahead, took my records and show up, and it's all mostly Hispanics. And I'm like, oh, this is cool, The name of the event was called Cabrona, which is bitch in Spanish, but they use the logo from Corona.
So Camel flies out about 300 Germans on planes without seats, and they dance, and they have a DJ, and they dance all the way to America, and they rent a dry lake bed outside of Las Vegas, and they had us and some other promoters from California work on filling up the space. It wasn't a lot of people at the time. It was like 5,000 people, and they just wanted to get the right photos and show the winners and show the whole thing. It was like a promotion for them.
Desert Move was from a group, well, that was just the name of the event, but the promoters were throwing mega raves in Germany. And at the time, here we are just trying to get things going in Las Vegas.
We took a bus out there. They didn't want anybody driving their cars because the BLM they were really strict on that.
But I remember driving up on that, and it looked like a UFO had landed in the middle of the desert. You couldn't see anything. All it was just lights and strobes, and you looked and I'm like, oh my God, what is that? Is that the rave? And they're like, yeah.
It was like the first large-scale, legitimate rave that I had ever been to. It was life-changing. That's the first time I ever heard the Chemical Brothers. That's the first time I ever heard Daft Punk. All the way up until this point, I had been a working DJ. I always was playing wherever wherever the work took me, and doing the format that needed to be played at these venues. Basically a working class DJ. But it was at that event, that's when I said, okay, I really want to focus on dance music.
Las Vegas became one of the top international nightclub destinations. Nightclubs like Pure, Hakkasan, XS, and Tao drew top DJ talent and celebrities that changed the way Las Vegas is perceived. With the building of Allegiant Stadium and the shift into sports and the visual wonder of the Sphere, one can only wonder what is next for the entertainment capital of the world and what new magic will appear in its future.